Well, hello everyone. Sorry I'm a little late to the game here, experiencing some minor technical difficulties, but hello and welcome to today's edition of Viral Faith. It is Wednesday, May 27th by my count. Boy, we're getting down to the end of the month. If you're here with me, I invite you to tell me that you're on board here. So that we can continue to have kind of a conversation here with one another. So I'm double checking my Facebook feed as well as the Restream feed. I am learning how to multitask here. So I see, let me know if you're here. I see Amy, hello to you, and Steph. I thought I saw perhaps Emily had jumped on earlier. Welcome. Hope you're having a good Wednesday here this morning. Hello, Mary Kramer. Hope your day is going well with all the folks in your household, the children that you're educating today. Not sure if you got to summer break yet or not. Hello, Sarah Hudson. Thank you. That I'm glad that you feel that I'm never late, because there's a lot of folks in my life who might beg to disagree with you. But good to be with you all here today. If you're newer to this Facebook Live joint here, my intention is just to offer some conversation with you all and interact on kind of a noon hour basis on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays to just share with you or invite a guest to share with me something that's been encouraging them in their faith during these days of pandemic or otherwise. As we move into this next phase of the pandemic, what's the Lord doing to encourage you in your faith? I want to share kind of a more of a personal reflection here today regarding the out direction. Many of you, if you've been at Fellowship, have been tracking with us since the beginning of the year, and especially just before the pandemic broke. We were talking about understanding our spiritual growth in life and formation in terms of the four big relationships that Scripture talks about. Our relationship upward with the Father, down in our relationship with ourselves, to love ourselves, love God, as we love others, as we love ourselves. The loving others is in two dimensions, so it's up, down, in with other disciples like us, and then out with folks who are not yet connected meaningfully to God and seeing transformation in their lives because of it. So I want to focus on the out direction as the pandemic has brought up a tremendous gospel opportunity just to recognize where God is moving and working to increase people's hope in something that isn't temporal and can get all screwed up by things like the pandemic, but a transcendent hope. And so I've been thinking about that outward direction. And we have had this opportunity now with regard to 7 questions at Fellowship. It was one particular way to enhance our efforts to bless our neighbors by asking some big questions about faith and just exploring them. And so was really encouraged last night. I meet with a group of guys there who are all passionately following Jesus to encourage one another in our lives, in our marriages, in our faith, in our up, down, in. And last night we were talking about what's going on in the out. And one of the guys in the group, a friend of mine, shared how excited he was that he took a big risk. He's got three guys in his life. One is an avowed atheist. Another grew up in faith, but kind of walked away from it and not sure that he can trust faith anymore. And then a neighbor of his who he also wouldn't say he had faith. And he was nudged by the Holy Spirit and his wife, it turns out, to invite them, to just throw an invitation to join him in exploring faith in this particular way through the 7 questions discussion group. And he was just really excited to tell us that he thought they would all say no, and actually they all said yes. And so they have been meeting a few times, even though one of the people in the group doesn't even want to watch the videos because he says they're all angled towards a particular point of view, and he feels, I don't know, something about that. But my friend went on to say that he read this text message he got from one of the neighbors in his group, and it was just so obvious that God was working in this person's life, because the text went on to say, like, I don't have opportunity. It seems like you evangelicals are always talking and thinking about faith, but that's not my life. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. And he actually asked my friend, I'm really unfamiliar with the Gospels or the Bible. I've read the Gospels a little bit. What other New Testament book would you recommend that I look at to explore faith more? And my buddy was just floored that there was this kind of interest that came about just because somebody was willing to say, hey, what are you guys thinking about spiritual things, and would you be interested in talking about what you're thinking? Which is exactly what these 7 questions group are designed to do. And I told my friend last night that I really resonate with the story he shared because, as you may know, Steph and I began a 7 questions discussion group via Zoom during the lockdown, and we've got, I don't know, 6 or 7 folks regularly showing up. Some are neighbors, some are relatives, some, are just friends from wherever, coworkers. And it's really been a delightful time just to hang out with one another, because everybody is longing to hang out with more people during this lockdown. I know that's true of us, but also hanging out around spiritual things is becoming very interestingly positive. In fact, one person in our group remarked about how they look forward to this meeting every week, to see everybody, to hang out and talk. But interestingly, the person said, and I don't believe the person has any regular experience with church, or at least organized church. It was said that this kind of feels like what church should be like. And I made a kind of a mental note about that, thinking about how powerful the opportunity we all have when we take seriously the out dimension in our life. Because it's one thing to talk about beliefs in terms of what we believe in our mind and our head, and that's important. That's part of what discussing 7 question goes around, and that's what we've been doing in our group, is having some really great discussion around some questions that we all wonder about and are difficult to answer precisely. But there's something happening in that discussion, and it reminds me of even what we understand and what I know about Jesus is that he didn't come to set up a religious system. He came in order to connect us to a living God. And there's a way to understand all that in terms of beliefs, and that's all right and good. But if it was just about beliefs, God wouldn't have needed to send Jesus. I mean, he could have just sent these massive reconditioned stone tablets, and he could have sent them like a meteor to Earth and drove them, flying through the atmosphere and impacting our Earth's crust. Like, he could have lodged these beliefs that we should know and understand into the Earth's crust, and there'd be a monument there for all generations of people. I mean, that's how he could have revealed truth, but he didn't. What he did do to reveal truth was to enflesh himself in human form. It's called the Incarnation, and we understand truth through relationship to Jesus. And I'm just encouraged these days that as our group is developing relationships, somehow there's a longing to be more connected to God somehow. And it's through these relationships that truth and that experience begins to take shape. And I don't know about you, but that encourages me, that I don't have to have all the answers and all the arguments down or be able to articulate, because really that's not what ultimately compels people. That's not what truth is only or singularly about. It's about the experience of truth lived out in relationships that touches on something that's deeply built in or baked in to us as humans. It's like wanting to go home. Like you feel like there's some place where you can belong and feel at home. And if you get to that place, you know the truth of it. And I wonder if part of that is beginning to happen in our group, which encourages me to no end. And I don't know if anybody from our group is on. I know Rachel sometimes has done some of these viral faith times, but I'm glad my sister-in-law is a part of the group. And if you're listening, Rachel, and want to comment, feel free about your experience with us together. But I don't know about the out dimension right now in your life, but I want to encourage you in that by giving you kind of a tool that's been helping me. If you think about the out dimension of us flourishing, like to really flourish in our relationship to Jesus, we've got to flourish in the up, connected to God. We've got to flourish in the down, in those areas of our life that will be conformed more like Him. We've got to be connected to other believers. But to really flourish, we also have to be flourishing in the outward direction. And it's very close connected with the upward direction. And in fact, this might be helpful to think in terms of your out relationship like a temperature. Like if you think about a spectrum of being either cold evangelistic temperature, or your out temperature is either cold or it's hot or it's somewhere in between. And it's helpful to think about it in those terms on a scale of like 1 to 10. If 10 represents an outward heart that is really hot and kind of sizzling, what does that indicate? It means that if your temperature is really increased and you're on the right side of the scale towards the 10, it means that you're probably praying quite a bit for people who may feel disconnected with God. It would mean that you probably have people in your spheres of orbits, in your relational orbits, who you're aware of, that there may be a sense of spiritual wandering. And consequently, you enjoy making time in your schedule to spend time with friends, so that you can bless them somehow and bring life and encouragement to them in one way or another. When a person is, their evangelistic or their out temperature is very hot, they tend to speak about their faith quite often, because there's always something fresh and new to share with somebody else, to testify to good things that are happening in their lives. They're sharing stories. They are quick to share good news naturally. But when our personal temperature for the out is at a 1, that means our hearts have really cooled off. Like we're no longer praying for people who may be disconnected from God. And we're not really mindful to pray for people, because most everyone in our orbit are people that we already talked to about spiritual things. And we forget that there's lots of people who don't really regularly have any kind of spiritual conversation or connections, or at least not about Jesus. Why? Because there isn't anyone around to have such conversations with, helpfully, or perhaps meaningfully. So when we're at a 1, it's hard to make room for relationships with folks who may be disconnected from God because they're full of relationships with Christian people, which is the inward direction and is very good. But how do we bring balance to that? How do we make space for people who are not yet enjoying the kind of relationship we may enjoy with God? We walk right past opportunities to be light to others, and we hardly notice when our hearts have cooled off. We rarely tell others about our faith. We rarely testify about the good things that are happening within our lives that we give credit to the Lord for. Why? Because our temperature has really cooled off. So one thing I might encourage you to think about is if you were on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is your temperature is very apathetic. 2 or 3, maybe you have a passion beginning to grow, but it's not very hot. When you get to 5 or 6, you realize there's a growing practice where you're moving from desire to actually sharing with others, or trying to be mindful in conversations. You start to tip the scale on the other end, the 7 or 8. You're having a growing impact. You feel like that God is really using you. You're aware of people who are coming to know God differently because they're in relationship with you. And then on to 10. So if we think about a temperature scale in the out direction of your life, are you cold, pretty cool? Is there some warmth there, or is it hot? Where would you put that? Just choose a number in your mind. If you want to comment that to the rest of us, you can feel free to do so. Like a couple months ago, before starting the 7-question group, well, let's say last fall in particular, I think I was more like 3 or 4, because I just didn't have enough room and space in my life to prioritize the out like maybe would be very good to do. So I had to be honest with where my temperature was. Now, here's the encouraging thing. It doesn't matter as much where you locate your out temperature. What's even more important, that's important, but there's something even more important. So you're a 2. So you're going to be real honest and say, I am just a 1. Or maybe there's some things happening in your life and go, praise God, I'm a 7. Wherever you mark that temperature, your out temperature in your life, the point isn't where you are. The important question is to say, how do I take that up 1 degree? What's something I could do today to move that temperature up 1 degree? So it doesn't matter where you are. It matters, okay, that's where I am. How do I move it 1 degree? And that takes a lot of the pressure that people often find in the outward direction to try to take 10 giant steps all together. No. Just take 1. What would it take to raise it 1 degree? And I think if you ask the Lord that, He's probably going to give you opportunity or some thoughts about how to begin moving that direction. It reminds me of what the Lord says in Matthew chapter 9. We've looked at this passage many times when it comes to the out. It says, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness. And I'm just mindful in this time of the pandemic, we ought to be what Jesus was doing, which is to be mindful of those around us who are being impacted by actual physical illness or the threat of physical illness, and speaking hope into these situations. It says, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. He saw their distress. He saw where their hope was coming up short. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his field. What's really interesting about this passage is that when it comes to our out temperature, the problem is not with the rest of the world. The problem is with God's people. there's plenty of opportunity all around us to be blessings to our neighbors. The problem is not a lack of opportunity. The problem is with the workers themselves. There's just not enough. Why? Because our hearts grow cold, because we look out at the world and we don't see it as Jesus does. We don't see it with great compassion. Our hearts might be cold because we blame people for not knowing who God is, maybe. Or we've just cooled off significantly that we're missing the opportunity of the harvest. So I want to encourage you to think about what's your out temperature, and think about the 1 degree rule. What's one thing you could do this week? Small, simple, not a big thing at all. What's one thing you could do to raise that temperature 1 degree? Maybe it just starts by praying. Maybe it starts by telling somebody, you know what, will you pray for me? I think my heart has really cooled off for people who are disconnected. I spend all of my time with people who are easy to have spiritual conversations with, and I haven't stopped to consider who in my life might benefit from a conversation around faith and exploring that with me. So I end with this story. Just yesterday, I had planned to go out for a ride late in the afternoon. It helps me blow off some steam, and I was going to go out for 30 or 40 miles in the afternoon, and I got like 2.5 miles from my home. I wasn't even outside of the neighborhoods, and I blew a tire. I flatted on my bike. Now I carry a flat kit so that I can repair the bike right there. I had everything I needed to do, but I don't flat very often, and I'm grateful for that. So, but I had put a new tire on my bike. Actually, I didn't. The bike shop did. I got these new rims, and they're deep well rims, and there was a new tire on it. And as soon as the tire popped, I go, oh no, this is going to be trouble, because the tire is so tight to the rim. And sure enough, I started trying to take the tire off, and I couldn't get my tire tool underneath there. I just couldn't get enough force to move it over. And so I'm standing there on the side of the road, obviously kind of struggling with this tire. And I had 2 people actually go by, one guy on a moped and another guy on a bike, asked if I need help. And yeah, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, no, I've got everything I need. I just can't do it. And one of the guys insisted. I mean, he asked me a second time. He says, "Oh, I just live over here." And I said, "You know what? If you had a screwdriver, if you could go home and get a screwdriver, it might give me enough leverage than the plastic tire tools I had." And he came back with a screwdriver, and next thing you know, he was actually, what I needed was 4 hands, not 2, to push this tire back. And so I eventually was able to do that. But then I got in conversation with this guy, and I discovered, like myself, he was a Wayne High School graduate. We overlapped. He was older, but I actually knew of his name, and we started talking, and before long he was telling me about just life. He was a cancer survivor. Not too long after high school, he battled cancer, and it was just a really interesting conversation, and I walked away from that. I'll tell you, here's the deal. Because I'm mindful of my out temperature, I walked away from that conversation thinking about, is there anything I can or should do to increase my temperature by 1 degree with this person I just met? Now, normally that's not necessarily one of my first thoughts, but it was yesterday. Now, I don't know, this guy may well have faith, and that's why he stopped, or maybe he doesn't. I don't know. I couldn't tell just from that initial interaction, but what's been on my spirit since yesterday is next time I ride out that way, I kind of know which house I think I know which house it was. You kind of described it from where we were standing, but I'm thinking I'm going to stop in and just thank him for his kindness once again, and see if that's a relationship that the Lord wants me to lean into, because I'm aware that he's working. And as I said, maybe the person already has faith, and then that's all to the good too, but maybe not. And so what would it take for me to lean into that and grow my faith in that regard? So lots of stories here. Sorry, I wasn't double tasking and reading some of the same comments, but I see you guys commenting to each other in this regard, and I'm glad for that. I think we all do better when we're prompted to have spiritual conversations among ourselves along many different faith lines. But what I want to say is one of the faith-filled conversations we need to have ongoingly is, where is our out temperature at? Have we cooled off? Is the fire gone? Or is there a passion to bless others in our lives and be used by God to encourage others in our lives by our witness and by our testimony to those who may not yet know God in the way that we are blessed, or being blessed to know God. So I want to encourage you with that thought and those stories today. Hopefully it resonates also in your spirit as well. So take some time later today or this week to ask the Lord, can you show me where my out temperature is right now? And then ask him, what do you want me to do about that? And see what he tells you. So thank you for joining me today. Thank you for spending some time talking about our faith during these viral times. And I pray that the Lord will bless you and show you what this word could or should mean to you and your family and your household. Join me again on Wednesday. I apologize. I didn't realize last Monday, the previous week, that Monday was going to be Memorial Day. I mean, I knew it somewhere, but I didn't put it all together. So obviously I missed you on Monday, but I'm glad to have spent some time today, and looking forward to getting together again at noon on this coming Friday. So until then, God bless you all, and we'll see you again real soon.